Third time is the charm. I have recorded this video twice, and neither time did I record audio. Now I'm watching the audio input, okay? Not doing that again. Okay, this video is to review Matt Whitman's lightning fast field guide to the Bible. I talked about it in a short on this channel. On this channel, we've talked about Matt Whitman, 10-minute Bible hour. That's where I first heard about him. And if you want a little more info on what that is, right now he's going through the book of John. Spends 10 minutes each day talking through that book. 10-minute Bible hour, kind of thing. But I was actually introduced to his channel because he was talking about some Catholic conversations, just having conversations with people of different denominational beliefs. He's done some of that. He had a whole channel called the Ironwood Rhino, which talked about some really interesting stories. So he's done a lot of different things. But this field guide is designed, like exactly the name says, a field guide to the Bible. And I thought, what if we assess that with other study Bibles to kind of explain how is this different than a study Bible? And why might I want to use it instead of a study Bible? And I think right off the bat, just so you know, his book was like $15. So that's a lot cheaper than a study Bible is. You probably have your own Bible. Just buying this to add on to have a little... It basically has the information you'd have in the intro of a study Bible. Right before the chapter, the study Bible talks about what the book's about. That's what Matt's book does. So this video is going to set out to assess his book against study Bibles. Why do I have 6 study Bibles here? I have a large collection of Bibles, which extends to study Bibles. And I don't want you to say you didn't compare it well because you used that one, or you didn't compare it well because you did use that one. We got 6 different ones that we will assess against. We have an ESV study Bible. It's rather modern. I've gotten it in the last 5-6 years. Then we have this Adventure Bible. It is for the New International Reader's Version, so for kids. It is a replica of what I had as a kid before it upgraded to this NIV study Bible, which is a Quest study Bible. It is old. It was from 2007, so that makes me feel old also. Then we have a Life Application Study Bible. It's for the New Living Translation. NIV is New International Version. And then we have a MacArthur Study Bible, which is the NASB, New American Standard Bible. And then we have, at the bottom down here, a New King James Study Bible. These bottom 3 are all pretty modern. How am I going to assess them? We're going to take a book that I have not spent a lot of time studying, Zephaniah, and we are going to read a random chapter in it. Chapter 3, it only has 3 chapters. And we're going to figure out how each of these help us understand the context of the chapter we just read. So that will be our assessment, okay? But first, we should read Zephaniah chapter 3. Here's a reading of Zephaniah chapter 3 in the English Standard Version. Woe to her who is rebellious and defiled, the oppressing city. She listens to no voice, she accepts no correction, she does not trust in the Lord, she does not draw near to her God. Her officials within her are roaring lions, her judges are evening wolves that leave nothing till morning. Her prophets are fickle, treacherous men, her priests profane what is holy, they do violence to the law. The Lord within her is righteous, he does no injustice. Every morning he shows forth his justice, each dawn he does not fail, but the unjust knows no shame. I have cut off nations, their battlements are in ruin. I have laid waste their streets so that no one walks in them. Their cities have been made desolate, without a man, without inhabitant. I said, surely you will fear me. You will accept correction. Then your dwelling would not be cut off, according to all that I have appointed against you. But all the more they were eager to make all their deeds corrupt. Therefore wait for me, declares the Lord. For the day when I rise up to seize the prey, for my decision is to gather nations, to assemble kingdoms, to pour out upon them my indignation, all my burning anger. For in the fire of my jealousy, all of the earth shall be consumed. For at that time I will change the speech of the peoples to a pure speech, that all of them may call upon the name of the Lord, and serve him with one accord. From beyond the rivers of Cush, my worshippers, the daughters of my dispersed ones, shall bring my offering. On that day you shall not be put to shame because of the deeds by which you have rebelled against me. For then I will remove from your midst your proudly exultant ones, and you shall no longer be haughty in my holy mountain. But I will leave in your midst a people humble and lowly. They shall seek refuge in the name of the Lord. Those who are left in Israel, they shall do no injustice and speak no lies, nor shall there be found in their mouth a deceitful tongue. For they shall graze and lie down, and none shall make them afraid. Sing aloud, O daughter of Zion. Shout, O Israel. Rejoice and exult with all of your heart, O daughter of Jerusalem. The Lord has taken away the judgments against you. He has cleared away your enemies. The King of Israel, the Lord, is in your midst. You shall never again fear evil. On that day it shall be said to Jerusalem, Fear not, O Zion. Let not your hands grow weak. The Lord your God is in your midst, a mighty one who will save. He will rejoice over you with gladness. He will quiet you by his love. He will exult over you with loud singing. I will gather those of you who mourn for the festival, so that you will no longer suffer reproach. Behold, at that time I will deal with all of your oppressors. I will save the lame and gather the outcasts, and I will change their shame into praise and renown in all the earth. At that time I will bring you in, and at the time when I gather you together, for I will make you renowned and praised among all the peoples of the earth when I restore your fortunes before your eyes, says the Lord. This assessment will be a little less scientific. I don't have an Excel spreadsheet this time. I just have a bunch of notes that I wrote as I read through each of the study Bibles. And mostly I want to hit on what is in Matt's field guide that's not in these study Bibles. And part of that includes talking about like some of the differences in the study Bibles. And honestly, I like Matt's field guide. I will use it. But I have a couple things that if I were to make my own field guide, then I might add to it. And we'll get to that as we go through these study Bibles here. So one really cool thing about Matt's field guide that is not in any of the study Bibles is the data on the book. Check this out. Okay. This is for Zephaniah. It has where it is in the Bible. It's book. Okay, come on, focus. Book 36 of 66. Has 3 chapters, 53 verses, gives you the word count. And I think what's really interesting here is the most used words. I think that is something I find very helpful and interesting. If we were to step back for a minute and talk about the things that I know about Zephaniah just off the cuff, literally all I know is that it is a minor prophet, and obviously it's written about judgment. That's what a lot of the minor prophets are doing. That's the extent of what I know. So when I'm trying to read this chapter 3, I'm like, looks like judgment to me. Cool. So it's kind of hard to like understand how to interpret and apply. So these study Bibles, this context kind of helps with that step there, because all I know is I've observed there's judgments, you know? So the cool thing that I want to hit on in his field guide that is not in any of the study Bibles is the most used words. I don't know if that's always needed or super duper helpful, but I like it. So the most used words in Zephaniah are Lord, land, people, live, declares, son, gather, seek, anger, remnant, but, wrath, city. So really seems like words of judgment, if you ask me. Something that all of these will hit on, that Matt hits on well, is that Zephaniah, the man, he's a minor prophet, so he's a prophet. He's speaking the words of God to God's people. He is actually from the lineage of King Hezekiah, so he has royal lineage. So he has very great exposure to royalty, royal court, all of that. He's part of King Josiah's royal court, so that puts you in a little time frame and timeline of what's going on in God's kingdom at that time. King Josiah is one good king in a whole selection of bad kings that are continuously just rebelling against the Lord, going against him, blaspheming him. King Josiah finds the word of the law, has it read to him, and he goes, crap, we've got to turn from our ways, and implements a lot of reform, both for physical buildings in the temple, but also reform for people repenting of their ways and changing their ways. So that's similar timing as Zephaniah. One thing that some of the study Bibles hit on, all of them hit on Josiah. So you have that timing. And I think a couple of them talked about other minor prophets that were his contemporaries. But Matt is the only one that brought up several, which is Habakkuk, Jeremiah, and Nahum. And as I read his field guide for all of those minor prophets, which didn't take me a lot of time, I realized kind of where this stands out a little bit. He hits on this is that Zephaniah is like much more doomsday than even the rest of the minor prophets. All of them are like, these people are gonna die. This is gonna destroy. They're all kind of like that, but we just read the whole earth will be consumed by fire in God's wrath. That seems, I'd love to just read that metaphorically as like pure. That seems very physical. The world will be destroyed by fire, in the same way that it was destroyed at one point with water, and then God made a covenant through the rainbow to Noah to never do that again. So it's other some of the other minor prophets hit on, okay, Nineveh will be judged. Babylon will be the tool that God uses to judge the kingdom here. As far as I can see, Zephaniah is the only one that's like, the whole earth will be destroyed in God's judgment. So pretty drastic. Not just the people of God, like the whole earth. Yeah. And then also one thing that Matt brought up that none of the other study Bibles here did. We have 6 study Bibles here. None of them brought this up. Is that friendly fire. Zephaniah is doing friendly fire. He's calling out judgment against leaders that are corrupt and royal courts that are corrupt, and he has exposure to that. So he's like calling out the same kind of people that he is, if that makes sense, like vocationally. So I thought that was really interesting. But something that's similar between all these tools and Matt's book is that they all talk about the themes that are in the book of Zephaniah, the judgment of God, purification by fire. All of them talk about those themes. They all talk about the theme verses, the key verses. So you're not going to miss that if you have his versus this study Bible versus this versus this. They're all going to have that, okay? So that's stuff that you'll see throughout. And next we'll go through each of the study Bibles. I'm not trying to make a full assessment. I'll just talk through briefly some of the nuances and differences between them so we can get a big picture of study Bible versus field guide, okay? First, we have this English Standard Version Study Bible. One thing I really liked about it that was actually different than information Matt gave us was that Zephaniah's name means Yahweh has hidden. I think that's interesting in the context of like minor prophets explaining the wrath and the judgment of God. There's a house centipede that both of my cats are trying to kill. Thunder was killing it earlier. Ricky is now. Though she's less violently killing. She's just jumping at it. I don't know which cat, but one of them literally cut off some of Bro's legs, so I'm glad I intervened. He's hiding under a bed now. But anyway, the Yahweh is hidden. Seems like a very conceptually understandable name. Well, to give a prophet, but also a way to view God in times of judgment. Might feel like he's hidden because all the destruction is happening. Where's the protection of the Lord? So I found that interesting. The ESV Study Bible brought that up. The ESV Study Bible, like all the rest of the Bibles, brings up at least the context of this is written around the time of King Josiah. All of them talk about the years that they think is written, and they all mention King Josiah, and that includes Matt. So they all have that context, if that's all you're looking for. One interesting thing that the ESV brought up was that the northern kingdom at this point has already been destroyed by the time this prophecy is written for the southern kingdom. I don't recall Matt bringing that up. So the idea that Israel is split into 2 kingdoms at this point. There's a northern kingdom. It has its own set of prophets and kings. A southern kingdom has its own set of prophets and kings. Zephaniah is writing to the southern kingdom. The northern kingdom has already been destroyed. And it brought up the completion of prophecy both now and future, which is a great hermeneutical principle. We see prophecy in the Bible. It generally has completion near term. So the southern kingdom of Israel, Judah, literally will be destroyed by Babylon. But also there is another impeding judgment of God on the earth that's actually for the whole earth and not just God's people. Okay, let's go to the study Bible next. Yes, it is a kid's book, but I think sometimes reading stuff in the verbiage of children is helpful, specifically with challenging concepts, and so I think it's helpful. This had good detail. It talked about everything you need to know about prophecy, basically really broken down into warning, salvation. And that's exactly what Zephaniah does. We got lucky when we read the random chapter 3. That is about, it ends kind of the talking about the destruction of the whole earth, and then it goes into God's plan for salvation. This hit on all the important points, even for kids. Okay, the Quest Study Bible. Something I really liked about this, that I think if I was making my own field guide, I would add, it was a why read this book, which, yes, is very like personal, almost kind of application based, but I almost kind of wish I had that in a field guide of like, why would I care to read this book? Like, where does this book fit into the life that we live nowadays? Yes, I just read about Israel's destruction. Israel is bad, destroy, justice. Okay. But why read this specific prophet is helpful. So I'm going to actually read it from this Quest Bible. Quest Study Bible. It's a NIV. Why read this book? To reinforce your confidence that God will make everything right. When justice is distorted, when the line between right and wrong is blurred, when leaders become corrupt, it's easy to become discouraged. And when religious leaders fail, discouragement can turn to cynicism. Zephaniah reassures us that we can still trust God, that even in dark times our faith can still burn brightly. So it has a bit of application, so there's that. Maybe you don't like that. I think that's helpful when you're flipping through and you're like, why would I care about this minor prophet versus this one? This tells you why. Other things about this, it talks about Zephaniah's name meaning not just the Lord hides or the Lord protects. So I don't know if that's just like a Hebrew translation, could mean both one or the other, that he hides or he protects or he has hidden. I don't know. Just thought I would bring that up. And then this specifically adds to the timeline that this is before Nineveh's destruction, which is what one of the other minor prophets prophesies. Okay, the Life Applications Study Bible. Big, bulky book, lots of detail. Pretty helpful. A guy in my church really likes this, really advocates for this. It's a good resource, definitely. One note I want to make is that all the rest of the study Bibles and the field guide all left Zephaniah timing. They tell you the years they think it was written, but they leave the timing to generically around the time of King Josiah, around the time of his reign. For some reason, and then the Quest Bible study before the Nineveh destruction. Okay. But these two specifically wanted to specify when in Josiah's reign, specifically before or after the reform happened, when the book was written. Since we're talking about this one, it says that Zephaniah's ministry, this is written at the end of Zephaniah's ministry, that's specific, but okay, maybe it's the end of his life, he's seen a lot of things, whatever. And it's when Josiah's reform began. So I don't know if that means they're trying to say that this was written while Josiah's reforming or before he reformed. I don't know. Weird point. And then judgment, then blessing. Same pattern that we saw written about in other intros and whatnot. One thing I thought I would bring up, it's just different. Look at the intro here. That is a lot of words. I'm going to read it, okay? Part of it, not the whole thing. Overwhelming grief, prolonged distress, incessant abuse, continual persecution, and imminent punishment breed hopelessness and despair. If only, we cry, as we search our minds for a way out and look to the skies for rescue. With just a glimmer of hope, we would take courage and carry on. Hope is the golden shaft of sun breaking through the storm-darkened sky. Words of comfort and the intensive care unit. The first spring bird perched on a snow-covered twig, and the finish line in sight. It is a rainbow, a song, a loving touch. Hope is knowing God and resting in his love. Beautifully written, but I read a lot of words. None of them super get me to the details of the context of this book. So I have a very, if you look at the color wheel, blue, detail-oriented energy. I'm assuming if you're watching this Sparked by Scripture, we talk about coding, that you're kind of like the give me the details kind of person. So all of this is really not my vibe when I'm trying to just understand a book of the Bible and its context. But maybe you specifically like this kind of thing. So I'm glad this is not how the field guide is written. There's practical application explanation in that book. But if you want this, this is where you get that. I do like the study Bible. I've used this a lot. I've used this, and there's a lot of detail in it, and you can sift through what's useful to you or not. I just thought it was a funny point. There's a lot of words, fluffy words. Okay, now on to the MacArthur Study Bible. It's written in the New American Standard Bible Version, which is a literal translation similar to the ESV. I think we've talked about this. Okay. This also has notes on Zephaniah's name, what that means. It talks about his royal relations, and the weird thing about the timing is that this study Bible says it's because of the content of Zephaniah and the prophecy. This book must have been written before Josiah's reforms. Which I'm like, are you saying that because you're saying Zephaniah wouldn't be warning God's people if they were reforming, so it couldn't have possibly been written after? I don't know. The specificity of the timing of when it was written in accordance to Josiah's reform seems weird and kind of unnecessary and kind of contradictory to the life application one that was like, this is during it or something. Like, if we're not entirely sure, I'd rather just say that and keep it ambiguous than say something to make a theological point. You read me? So I don't love that about this study Bible. And then also the study Bible, it hits that we read this passage about how God will purify his people's speech. And this study Bible specifically says, some people believe this hints at the future universal language, which is the gift of tongues. It doesn't mean that because yada, yada, yada. And it's like, why did we even bring that up? I'm using this introduction to this book to help in the observation stage of observation, interpretation, application. And by saying that this doesn't mean the gift of tongues continues, you've skipped 3 steps ahead in the application, and I don't appreciate that, and it's weird. And I do understand, this is for John MacArthur, this is his study Bible. It's probably trying to teach based off of how he understands things. I understand that. Not my vibe. I don't appreciate that when I just want the details of the context of the book, knowing that John MacArthur thinks it doesn't mean this because I didn't need to know that. That wasn't important context to the book. That's your context to the book. You know what I mean? I don't love that. And I really appreciate that Matt, in his humility, tries to keep things just informative. Here's what you need to know. He's not trying to convert you to be an evangelical Protestant wherever he lands. He's just giving you information, okay? And then the last one here, the New King James Version, Study Bible. One thing I really like about it, the field guide doesn't need this, but I find it fun, is that it has pictures. Look at this. Imagine you're a man named Zephaniah in 650 BC. And I have got all the pictures of the landscape that go with it. Okay. This one just brought up Hezekiah. That's the king, King Hezekiah, that Josiah is related to. One particular thing that I did really appreciate about this one is that Matt ties in Christology, which is the study of Jesus and Christ. He brings that in already. But this one specifically says, hey, Jesus quoted Zephaniah 1:3 when he was talking about his second coming. I really appreciate that note. So that's kind of our assessment of the study Bibles here. We've walked through similarities that they all have, differences. At the end of the day, do I recommend recommend that you buy Matt's book, or do I not recommend it? I am really appreciative that I have it, to be honest. I would rather carry around whatever version of the Bible that I want and Matt's book versus carrying around a study Bible. I like study Bibles. They serve a specific purpose in Bible study. If I really want to sit down and understand a passage, I'll grab a few study Bibles, read through all their explanations of it. That's how I use them. But I think like day to day, I probably will just carry around his field guide with my Bible. Because here's the other thing. I flip-flop what version I'm reading, probably annually. Right now I'm reading the Christian Standard Bible. And so the reason I actually have a lot of different version study Bibles is because of different years when I switched to a new translation that I wanted to read. And I wanted to have a study Bible in that so that I could have like within the translation I'm reading, background information on the book I'm reading and stuff like that. Which Matt's guide doesn't have like explanation of every single passage that you read, but it does have really helpful tie-ins, themes, explaining what's going on. Like I said, I really appreciate that he explicitly called out Zephaniah has kingship in his blood and is calling out the corruption of the kingship. So that's really all of the study Bibles talk about kingship in his blood. Don't get me wrong, but Matt tied it specifically to like, look, he's calling this out and he literally has this in his blood. That means something, you know? I really appreciate that tie-in. I appreciate that Matt isn't pushing specific theological beliefs like our friend John MacArthur here. I don't hate John MacArthur. He's dead. He doesn't care about me. But if I want, I don't know, I don't always want your beliefs pushed. I want just like, even just what are all the beliefs? I don't know. So that's my synopsis of the field guide to the Bible versus the study Bibles. I will be using this. I recommend you grab one. Again, it's not just for me. It's not just for people that have read the Bible but need a synopsis of certain books. It's not just for if you need a reminder before Sunday what this book is about. It's not just for anyone. It's for everyone. If you are new to Christianity, this is a great resource. If you don't even care about Christianity, you just want to understand this book that is a bestseller, has been, this is a great resource for you. It's almost like the Bible for Dummies guide, but really short and sweet and only $15. So great resource to have on your bookshelf. I'm really glad I have it. I'm excited to keep using it after my Bible studies and just seeing all the different ways that it kind of enlightens my reading of God's Word.